It's gonna be a hard position to defend, but...
Because you're addicted to it, got it.
Yeah, that's my Bailey argument. I have to figure out what my mod argument is to retreat to. Anyway, the point of the matter is... Alex, at the end of 2023, we were absolutely inundated with a bunch of really great games that we had to play. I didn't play a lot of those at the time because you gave me a game that was called Ship Graveyard Simulator 2.
Yeah.
And so I played that instead. I wanted to discuss something in relation to that. A thing I think I've discussed at some point, the notion of junk food games. For those of you who are not really familiar with the concept, imagine you have like your, well, from last year, the Baldur's Gate 3s or the Lies of P, something to that effect. Those are kind of like, you know, you go out to a fine dining restaurant and you're getting the ahi tuna, you're getting the prime rib, the filet mignon, you're getting your lovely charcuterie board with all of your...
These are your games with deep narratives or very, very time intensive, like storylines and plots and gameplay mechanics and loops and games that really require your attention.
They're made with a level of care and consideration going in so that they kind of resonate with you. That they build a full-bodied kind of experience for the player.
Yes, I like to swirl around my full-bodied games.
Ooh, in the Tanuki suit?
No.
Okay. But there are also another kind of game that Ship Graveyard Simulator 2 falls into, which is essentially the bag of potato chips of a video game. It has carbs, but it's like empty carbs. But you can't stop eating them. You just keep coming back to them over and over again.
It's a little bit crunchy, it's got a bit of jank to it, you're not sure if that one's stale and fell on the floor, but man, you're gonna keep eating it.
Yeah, you know that it's not good for you even when you're eating it, and you don't even feel completely satisfied with it, but you just keep wanting to down those damn sour cream and onions. And there's not much that you can do about it. And some people have thought of that as bad. One of the ones that I originally talked about was like We Happy Few, because technically it's in the vein of trying to do something more interesting, but a lot of times you're just kind of going around streets and doing whatever and tooling around. I
figured you were going to say Vampire Survivors.
Vampire Survivors, I will actually say Vampire Survivors is a little bit more than a junk food game.
Sure, I mean, maybe if you want to say that.
It's going to be a hard position to defend. But...
Because you're addicted to it, got it.
Yeah, that's my Bailey argument. I have to figure out what my mod argument is to retreat to. Anyway, the point of the matter is, the junk food game, though, I definitely can reference, is Ship Graveyard Simulator 2. You've played some of this, I've played quite a bit of it. Basically, the framework of Ship Graveyard Simulator 2 is basically, I got my little hut, you go there and you choose one of these ships that you're going to break apart. And then you put it onto the dock, and you go there, and you get yourself a hammer, and you've got yourself a torch, and a buzzsaw, and a bunch of other tools, and the idea is that you gotta just disassemble this, and get a bunch of stuff that, you know, several of your people are looking for missions. I need gold, I need steel, I need these chemicals coming out of it, or get me 15 lockers from this place. And then they'll reward you with money. And you can also scrap all of the stuff from the ship and get money from metal, non-metals, liquids, etc. And use that to upgrade, and then you can upgrade all of your stuff so that it's easier to do on larger ships. So eventually you get up to like level 10, and it becomes incredibly easy even on large ships to break stuff apart.
Yep. This game is, again, I think I had gotten it for you and suggested you played it because you also had played Hard Space Shipbreaker, which it is very similar to, but much more relaxing than, because there's none of the survival or any of the story or any of the other stuff like that.
Right. Where
Hard Space Shipbreaker is a game that, you know, has a good story and has a lot of cool elements to it, but also this cool braking thing, but it's a lot more of a kind of a high stress thing. Ship Graveyard 2 is much more relaxing, much more just kind of like a kind of like pressure washer simulator, where it's like there's no real
Yes.
stress here. It's
No.
just, here's a thing you can do. It's gonna feel cathartic. You're gonna have fun. You're not gonna realize you just spent 4 hours breaking apart that giant ship.
And you're zoning out, and you're just like, oh, cool, so I gotta break this down, I gotta do this thing. And you just kind of like get an order of operation in your head of the stuff that you're gonna have to do, to the satisfying conclusion of, ooh, if I just take out all of these struts, maybe the whole thing will just fall down at one time. And then you spend
Which
the
is-
next... Yeah, then you spend the next, 20 minutes just picking up everything and chucking it in your in your truck. It's like, oh yeah, I've detached all of this, now I can bring the crane over, and they take the individual parts of the hull, and they bring it over to scrap. Yeah, like, I would say Hard Space Shipbreaker is a game that is not really a junk food game. It is definitely more involved. You can die often in that game. You have to really consider your order of operation most of the time to make sure that you don't get set on fire or become cryogenically frozen.
Or blow everything up.
You have to, like, figure this out almost like every one of those ships is a real puzzle that you have to solve. Ship Graveyard Simulator isn't like that. You can't die, you don't have a life bar, you could be right next to an explosion when it happens, nothing happens to you. You can be underneath the ship when it all comes collapsing down, nothing, don't worry about it. There's no time limits, it doesn't matter if it's at the end of the day, work around the clock, there's no mechanics to, like, day or night except how well you can see stuff. Even when you have, like, gas lines or electric lines, it doesn't really affect your ability to do stuff all that much, except that there's some areas you have to do an extra step for. But I wanted to make the defense of junk food games for exactly that reason, that sometimes you don't really want to play an involved game. And a lot of times I don't. A lot of times I actually don't want to play a super involved game where I have to really think about the consequences of my actions and about the intricacies therein. Sometimes what I want to do is put a big ol' ship on a dock, take my giant Mjolnir hammer, and start smacking panels down, and just watch them all fall on the ground.
Sometimes we game because we just want to relax and zone out.
Yeah.
I do it quite often after work. I usually don't play anything super intensive. And I find that the games I do sink a lot of hours into are the ones that aren't really a difficult game or have intense narratives or anything like that. A lot of time, because I spend all the time that I'm not playing games doing physical labor. So I just kind of want to be like, it's funny because these are like work simulator games too, where it's like, yes, I've just gotten done with my physical labor job. Let me go into a game where I pick up a sledgehammer and
do
beat shit.
physical labor. Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because there are a handful of games that I know are actually quite good and involved that I should play, that I have been avoiding playing for that very reason, because I don't think I'm in the headspace.
You got me near Replicant, and I'm like, yeah, it's a game I want to play, and I'm like, I will need to set aside 60 hours for this game.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is daunting.
I have Disco Elysium. I know Disco Elysium is a great game. Everyone who's ever played it has basically said that. I know that it's going to be up my alley, but I also know that it is a game that I actually have to concentrate on, that I have to be aware of the narrative. It's all narrative. That's like a main focus of the game, is the narrative part. It's a mystery, and so I have to be in it. But that also means, like, I'm not going to really be able to, like, watch videos or other things while I'm doing that. I can't listen to music or anything. I gotta be focused in, honed in on this one thing, and have a mindset to be able to complete it.
And I think, having listened to a bunch of the Second Wind stuff lately, I think those guys over there call games like Ship Graveyard Simulator more of like podcast games too, because you can sit down, listen to a podcast, and just kind of do whatever. podcasts like this, maybe. Maybe you've got a game on the side that you're playing right now. Let us know in the comments.
Yeah, what are you playing in the corner? Is it something from Steam Next Fest? Let us know. It might have been Nimrod. Yeah, exactly. But I do find that I play a lot of those for that same reason, is that I don't think I'm going to be focused entirely on them. And I still want to play something, and I still want to feel like I achieved something. And you can have games that are more involved, like a lot of strategy games you don't have to be completely focused in on, especially if they're turn-based. It's why I can play XCOM or something like that. But there is something very cathartic about not having to worry about, am I going to die in this game? Am I going to have to run away from big scary thing? Am I going to have to think about this combat? Am I going,
Yeah, I think that also, not to harp on it because we both disliked it, but I think that is a primary reason that neither of us clicked with Star Trucker.
Yeah, Star Trucker gets deeper in the weeds than it ever really had to be, and I could see a version of Star Trucker that's literally like, wouldn't it be cool if it was like Cruising USA but with a truck in space, and you're
you have
Crazy
that
Taxi.
In American Truck Simulator and Euro Truck Simulator, you have a trucking game, and people play those, and they're very in depth, but they're also very zen for people because you are just driving on the road. It's like sometimes it's like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna relax as a trucker. You're still playing a game. You're still involved in it, paying attention to all the things in the game because driving requires paying attention. But you're not taken out of that zen from that game by having to deal with your oxygen running out or flat tires or things like that.
Exactly.
Sure, you have to repair your truck if you crash too much, but it's very in the game. It's not like, oh, I've got to get out and repair my flat and call a tow truck. It's kind of just go, hey, you banged up your truck a bit. Stop in and pay some money to repair it. Cool.
Right.
And you can listen to a podcast. You can watch videos on the side, although you're supposed to be driving, pay attention to the road.
Yes. Yeah.
You can do that stuff on the side of those games and not break the game flow or break the flow of being able to listen to whatever you're listening to on the side.
Right.
Star Trucker, though, you would have to be, oh shit, my oxygen, my magnet, my gravity, whatever, all this stuff. And when you add those survival elements, it takes that zen away, which is not what I think people were going into that game wanting, personally.
Sure.
Again, not to harp on it because neither of us liked it, and it was a demo. It's fine. Whatever. If you like it, that's fine. But we're talking about junk food games.
Right. I think the thing that's important to note is, what would you do to actually get a junk food game? You'd have to have, fairly limited mechanics. It can't be too in-depth. It has to be pretty much, maybe pretty much just 2 or 3, key mechanics that you're basically interacting with the entire time.
I mean, they have to be simple mechanics. I think you can get a little in depth with some of them, but not to the point where it requires deep analysis.
Right. Or long-term thinking. That's also
I don't
something.
want to be leveling up my character in Baldur's Gate 3 while I'm trying to listen to some interesting podcast or video essay over on the side, because leveling a character and picking what feats or all the other stuff you can get, what spells you're going to take, and then the dialogue options in that game, all of that's going to make you require your attention on that game and not on what you're trying to do on the side.
Yeah, that is something that I found with Baldur's Gate 3 is the game's great, but we're gonna get into a dialogue, and I'm going to have to concentrate entirely on the fact that you're having some of the best voice actors in the business doing these very in-depth scenes that you're going to be a part of, that are written by fantastic writers over at Larian, and I'm sitting there oh no, the scene started, but I'm also listening to this thing over here. Oh God. What am I gonna do now?
This part of this podcast is going a little all over the place, but for me, my issue was Baldur's Gate is really cool and the story is really interesting, but also, oh my god, the pacing, can I not have 10 minutes of dialogue every 5 minutes? I don't want...
I know it's the
I'm going into the Druid Grove, I don't want to talk to one person for 5 minutes, walk 30 feet, talk to another person for 5 minutes, because everybody that I interact with has something interesting. Or even if they're
Right.
banal, they have nothing interesting to say, they're still going to talk at me for 5 minutes.
Right. Yeah. No, there's a lot of dialogue. I guess I'm surprised that you would have a problem with that, considering how much you like classic Japanese RPGs, which have like hour-long cutscenes. So
Yeah, but I don't play a lot of those anymore.
you've grown out of that.
I need to find the games I really enjoy again.
Yes.
Whatever that may be. But JRPGs is a little different because they're paced fairly linearly,
Yeah.
at least. In this case, it's like, oh yes,
It's very
there's
open.
only a couple, like you only have a few people you need to actually talk to, and every other NPC in a JRPG typically does not have much to say if they are even talking to you.
Right.
This one, it's like, yeah, you can talk to all these people. They all have interesting things to say. And it's like, I don't want side quests and interesting things to say.
at the
I just want to go through the story.
There is a real demand, and I think an ever-increasing one, to get games that are almost passive in how you interact with them.
We have idle games.
Yeah, we have idle games all the time, and some of them are really fun. One of the ones that I played recently that is not Nimrod's, but I played a similar one, Brotato, that is also in the Vampire Survivors kind of tradition, where you are playing a potato with guns. Fun times. Anyway, the point of the matter is, the way that game is structured is that it's like an auto bullet game, where, you fire automatically at the things that are closest to you at an interval. You go in, it's like a minute, and then your round is over, and you see if you can purchase any upgrades or other guns, and then you go back in for the next round, and there are more enemies, and you run around and try to avoid getting hit while, collecting as much stuff as you possibly can. And over and over and over again for like 1 minute sessions in different levels. Very straightforward.
Those are still an active game, as opposed to like an idle game versus or an auto battler, which
Sure.
I'm typically not a fan of those. I don't really play those. Have not really played any that I can think of in a very long time.
Yeah, they don't keep you
Well,
engaged.
Yeah, I would like, for junk food games, it's a game that keeps you engaged and active, but doesn't require your full deep attention.
Right. You have to do simple things. It's about simplicity in what you're actually achieving. I don't have to think too much about this. I think that might be the reason why a lot of survival crafting games end up being such a big thing for people. Because, you build one thing, I chop down a tree, I build a thing with the tree, I gotta do the next thing, I get myself an axe, then I take the axe and I go and chop up stuff down. They engage you with some pretty straightforward mechanics, but they never feel like I have to really concentrate very much on them during that
survival
time,
crafting's a whole can of worms itself.
which we're gonna talk about in a minute.
Yeah.
But the more idle sort of games, or I guess I should say, junk food games definitely have a place in the space. They occupy a very good space for everyone who kind of wants to zone out when they're playing a game and do something that you might know is not particularly healthy for your gaming diet, but is ultimately satisfying enough. I can always tell that I'm playing a junk food game because I go away feeling like, well, that didn't feel very productive or interesting at all, but I
think they feel very productive.
Yeah.
Especially some of the job simulator games. Power Wash Simulator, for instance, you feel great when you've cleaned a thing completely.
Yeah, but it's just that feeling that comes down like, did I just spend like 3 hours of my life just breaking down a shit?
And I feel great about it. I feel so good about it.
You feel
like
satisfied.
When I play House Flipper 2, for instance, cleaning a house, restoring it, and then fixing it up. All that feels great. Car Mechanic Simulator, which I also have like 40 or something hours in, 60, I don't remember. I've got a ton. That one's really cool too, because I go out, find a car in the junkyard, find it, tune it up, fix it, replace all the parts, fix what I can, put it back together, sell it.
Yeah.
Do I wish there was a little more in that? Sure, absolutely. I wish there was
Yeah.
Something to make me require the money I'm getting other than just money go up.
Yeah, that would be nice. I think one of the reasons why they're so popular, too, is because most of the time in my, like, regular life, I don't feel like I've accomplished much of anything in the real world. And boy, it's nice to feel like I actually achieved something in a game.
Oh, well.
It's that whole thing where it's like, it doesn't feel like I really did anything. I know that I worked. I don't know if it really mattered at all, but boy howdy, after I take that damn ship apart in the graveyard, I know that ship's gone. That ship's
gone. The takeaway of this, Nathan, for you personally, is you need something that gives you a sense of accomplishment.
Oh, in a game?
In a game. I mean, probably life, you might want to work on that too, but that's not what we're here to talk about. I'm not your therapist.
If you are also dissatisfied with your life and live vicariously through video games, you let us know in the comments down below.
I think that's a lot of us these days.
That's a lot of us these days. When it feels like there's like you're living in entropy, welcome to video games.
There's a topic there somewhere about playing games to feel accomplished.
Yes. And I actually
we can think about.
I think I had on my back burner the idea of the good and the bad about gamification of tasks that we do in the real world too, which is sort of in the same vein. But that's for a different time. Let's move on.